Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. And for this week, it revolves around our correspondents. James, how are you doing?
I'm not too bad, Serge. And yourself?
Yeah, can't complain. It's Correspondence Week, and we're going to be releasing 4 podcasts every day for 5 days with our correspondents, one from each Premier League team. James, do you want to introduce today's correspondent?
I certainly shall. We are joined today by Sam at FPL Seagull, our Brighton and Hove Albion correspondent. How are you, Sam?
I'm very good, thank you. Hello, everyone.
Good man. Sam, can I ask you in the first instance, reaction to the fixture list that you've got? Are you quite happy with your start?
We got those 2 difficult games, I think. Straight away, you look at Chelsea and Man United in the first 3. Quite a tough first few games, but overall, there's not a long period we've got anywhere in the season with quite a few hard games in a row. So it's not too bad. It's not as bad as West Ham's. So.
Oh, I don't think anyone's
straight in on the dig.
No, it's not. It can't be a dig if you're looking at the fixture list.
If I compare
ours is a
Ham,
dog. There's no doubt about it. Other than Newcastle at the start, we're going to be down there. James has been very bullish on Brighton, and they're going to be a lot better next season and what have you. I would say that I'm not where he's at. I think, it's still going to be a difficult season, and that there's going to be some tough games as well. How do you feel about your upcoming season? What would constitute good for you, do you think?
Well, I think there's a lot of positivity as well going into this season after the finish we had towards the end of last season. I think you look at the teams that finished above us last year, Palace, Newcastle, Burnley. I think we could push ourselves up the table even more. I think we could compete with them, definitely. This is the first season where I actually feel like we're a proper Premier League team and we can really push on now. And it's not crazy to predict, top of the bottom half. So I think being positive, we could have a good season.
I think that's very realistic to set that goal of top to bottom half. I don't think the top half is even completely out of reach. I think you'll tend to find at the moment that the sides that finish in sort of 9th, 10th just have a little bit more consistency than the guys finishing sort of 11th to 14th or so. I really a little bit like you, Sam. It's good to hear that you feel like a Premier League club now, because it will take a mass adjustment from where the football club was 25 years ago, for example. And I just genuinely don't foresee you being in any danger at all. I feel like you've added well and quickly, which is very beneficial for obviously pre-season and stuff. I hope that Potter might tinker a little bit less than last season, because that would be very good for our FPL managers, who none of us seem to know further than Ryan and Dunk who's going to play from week to week. Do you feel like there'll be more consistency in the lineups this year?
I hope so, but I couldn't even predict the team now. I don't even know the formation. We could be going with 3 centre-backs. We could stick to the 4-2-2 that I used most of last season. I think we've got so much squad depth, especially in like that midfield, attacking midfield areas, that there will be some sort of rotation, and I'm going to expect that. But hopefully there's a bit more consistency, as he's bringing in his players and trying to get the best out of players that he's brought through and he likes. So I hope so. I hope there's more consistency.
Does that rule out, from an FPL perspective, do you feel like that rules out all the people like Trossard, Gross, McAllister, purely because of what you're saying now?
From the start, I don't think Trossard, I was hoping he'd be a bit cheaper. I think 6 is a little bit too much. Trossard, Gross, McAllister, I think from the start, I don't think I would have them in my team. I think there's a gem in there somewhere. There's a good player in there somewhere, but I don't know who yet. We'll see who gets consistent starts. And
maybe Sam, it's the new boy and the one that we haven't mentioned yet. James, I think, feels that he might end up playing a little bit deeper, but surely, I'm not sure. Lallana's always been a creative player. He is more expensive than even Trossard at 6.5. I think 6.5, isn't he? Is Adam Lallana?
Lallana,
Do you think he'll play deeper, or do you think he could go further forward as an attacking number 10?
Maybe deeper, yeah. But again, he can play in either of those. I think he could take Maupay or Gross's position a bit further up the pitch as well. I'm not sure if he'll be a starter. I think he's a good player to have, a versatile player to have on the bench. But I'm not sure. Maybe deeper. Maybe we need some more players in there to compete with Basuma, Stevens. Yeah.
On the first day of the price reveals, that was the one that stood out as that's way too much. Adam Lallana at 6.5 million, when you can have, like you said, Trossard at 6 million, or the likes of McAllister at 5.5, who having integrated now might step up this year. Pascal Gross has got historical from the first season, although the attacking returns have very much tailed off since. I only see Lallana playing in a more advanced role, perhaps when you play that. I mean, the formation I really like you in, the 4-2-2-2. That's the only way I'd see him playing. I wouldn't see him playing as a 10 in a 4-2-3-1 or more of a 3-4-3. I just wouldn't see him playing one of them attacking roles unless it was the 4-2-2-2. And the biggest problem I find when I look at your assets, I think you're right. Someone probably from that midfield will break out, but I haven't got a clue where to start personally, because like what you said, I don't even know what system you're going to play. At the moment, you had some brilliant news the other day, which was Lewis Dunk signing a new contract, because there was massive rumours a couple of weeks ago that he was someone Chelsea had identified and is apparently a boyhood Chelsea fan as well. Be like your mate Declan Rice, Suj, by the way.
What is it with all these guys supporting Chelsea?
Unlike Declan Rice, Lewis Dunk signed a new 5-year contract, which is great news for Brighton. But it also means you've got 6 centre-halves, although we think at the time of recording, it sounds like Shane Duffy's probably on his way to Celtic, we think. But you've got Webster, White and Clark have come back from loans. Byrne really is a left-sided centre-half, really, but has obviously covered very well at left-back. And that kind of, if all 5 of them stay there, I think you can see it being a back 3 again. Thoughts on that, Sam?
Yeah, I think that's the most interesting thing. I think when Potter first came in, it was about the attackers and how we were going to go forward with Maupay. But I'm interested to see what he does now. The last game of the season against Burnley, we played more of a 3 at the back with Lamptey as a right wing back, and that seemed to work really well. And I think a back 3 of White, Webster, and Dunk would be really, really strong. If he goes for the 4 at the back with the 2 centre backs, I'm not sure who misses out, because White and Webster, you can't have someone that's that good, either of those, and are too good to sit out. Then you've got Dan Burn, Clark, who was Derby Player of the Season last year. I think we've got some really, really good depth. I think I would like to see the 5 at the back. I think that would be interesting. But
so if you went that way, you think what, Lamptey right wing back and left wing back March maybe, if he's fit?
We don't. Yeah, March, Byrne, it's Bernardo. We've got a few. I think that's the position I want to see us strengthen. We were linked with Sessegnon on loan from Spurs, and I think that sort of player at left wing back would be really, really nice. Yeah,
I'd be really pleased if he went to you on loan for a year. By the way, not because I want to get rid of him, because I'd like to see him play football for a season.
Yeah.
And that would be the best role for him, as well as a wing back, in my opinion, rather than a direct out and out left back in a 4 as a left midfielder. Anyway, let's not get into Spurs. Interesting you mentioned about Bernardo, because he's 4 million. Could he potentially be the standout?
Well, I would have him starting. I think he's a really good player, especially as a left wing back. I think he's maybe better going forward than he is defensively, so he would suit that. But he seems to, after Potter came in, he had injuries, and then even when he was fit, he preferred Byrne over Bernardo, which is fair enough. Byrne played really well last year. I think it's one to look at. If he has a good pre-season, he could fit in at left back or left wing back really well. And he's our only out and out left back, I think, that can play. We've got Byrne, who's a centre back, and March, who's more of a left midfielder. So,
oh Sam, what have you just done? His ownership just went up about 10%. Bernardo, I think, mate.
No, it was one I looked at straight away. I saw 4 million. I thought, I love Bernardo, but
I know you spoke highly about him when we've podcasted with you before. So I just felt personally that he's out of favour. And like what you said, Burn is preferred to him. So
yeah,
you're taking a gamble there. But it might be interesting, particularly if March, unfortunately, is really prone to the odd injury. If Burn was
yeah.
injured as well, I think it might be one to come back to. In goal, your goalkeeper, who is a very solid FPL asset, 135 FPL points last year, 4.5 million. Is Matt Ryan the obvious go-to 4.5 million goalkeeper, in your opinion?
I think he is one of the better options. I was expecting to be a bit more expensive. I think he's our most popular asset so far, ownership-wise. I think you can't really go wrong with Ryan in there, 4.5 million, yeah. I think he's in my team at the minute.
Is he in yours, Suj?
Good option.
He is. It's him and McCarthy at the moment that are
Yeah.
battling it out at the top there. But he does have significantly more ownership, and I think we got very excited with the opportunity of a 4.54 million double up with Button as well. But he could be potentially on the move now, so maybe that's gone. But Matt Ryan at 4.5, I don't know why he hasn't a price rise to 5. If I'm honest with you, looking at the likes of Fabianski's 5, Dubravka's 5, all these other keepers that have had that 5 jump up to 5 million. Matt Ryan just looks like, really the go-to option. And you look at the 3 in front of him. The reason I picked Matt Ryan over Alex McCarthy as the centre-backs in front of him, I just think that Southampton's back line, they've got the new guy, what's Salisu, blah, blah, blah. But your guys are units, and then if you've got Bissouma and whoever else holding in front, you'd want to keep more clean sheets, and that's why I'm going with Matt Ryan for sure.
The one I think there's a couple, if at the time of recording, we think Button is probably going to West Brom, I think, Sam, is what we've heard. But let's assume that he does go. I think there might be a migration where people begin to look at the 4.5 rotators rather than a 4.5 and a 4.0. And there's 2 interesting ones from that perspective. One is Southampton. Do at the start of the season rotate quite well with Brighton, and also for the whole season, Sam's team's they're actually paired with Leeds. Is your pairer. So when one of you's at home, the other one away is vice versa. But I just feel personally with Ryan, and there seems to be a bit of a trend of people coming off him because that insurance policy is not there anymore in the 4.0 if Button's gone. He does the job brilliant. If he gets 135 points again at 4.5 million, that's fine. I don't really need anything else at that price. So I'd be very surprised personally if I didn't start with him. And the interesting thing is if Button does go, we spoke about this as the idea of blocking other Brighton assets. If you go with the 2, you probably don't want to start with a third. It actually opens it back up for the likes of Maupay up front. Sam, I think he could break out a bit this year. Thoughts at 6.5 million?
6.5 million. There's a few strikers around that. Maupay, I think he had a good season, good first season last year. He's one of the players that I think will consistently start. So you've got that. I hope he does well. Yeah, I think he could be an option. Definitely. I think with our team, you wait for the first 4 or 5 weeks and then see who's performing. But Maupay could be that player. Yeah, that gets more than he got 10 last year. I think he could better that. Definitely. Yeah.
I don't know, mate. Look, you've obviously got Chelsea and United in the first 3 fixtures, and you obviously took a couple of hide-ins in home games in lockdown. We're aware of that. Doesn't necessarily mean it will repeat itself again. If you had a crowd there, and I was looking at those 2 home games and then going Newcastle, Everton, Palace, West Brom afterwards, I think it's right. If I'm looking at some of these cheap options, I mean, the fact you got Chelsea and United in the first 3 wouldn't particularly put me off a Button. I'd accept there's probably not a clean sheet there, but it's not. If I was planning towards a late wild card, it's not something I'd want to be messing about with from the perspective of making a change. So
yeah,
I don't think the fixture list is that bad. Just looking, actually, your running's quite difficult. Actually, your last 8 or 9, so you probably don't want to get stuck in the position you were in coming into game week 30 time this year. What about Aaron Connolly, mate? Because he excelled in certain games last season, particularly that game against my team. Would you reckon of him? More minutes for Conley this year, 5.5?
If the squad stays as it is at the minute, I think, yeah, as a second striker, or he'll get minutes regularly. I think he's okay, but we've been rumoured to sign another striker to partner or compete with Maupay, so I'll just keep an eye on that one. But Connolly, we had a secret friendly the other day. He got 2 goals in a 3-0 win, so he'll be there or thereabouts around the squad on the bench. So yeah, 5.5 million maybe.
Wasn't much of a secret, that friendly, was it?
We tried to keep it secret, and then the players got onto Instagram, and it was everywhere. So.
Your players get onto a lot of things, but that's an offline conversation, mate. Talk to me a little bit about, we haven't mentioned Joel Veltman, who's another defender who's coming very experienced from Ajax. Have you got any impression in terms of where he's likely to play? Do you foresee him being a first team starter?
You're say left back now, aren't you?
No, he's not.
We've got those 3 centre backs that we mentioned, so I'm not sure if he'll be a starter. I haven't seen much of him, but apparently he can cover at right back, which would be if Montoya is going to leave, that'll be some good depth there behind Lamptey. So I'm not sure if he'll be a starter, but a bit of a bargain, I think, and he can cover centre back and right back. So
it's definitely a bargain signing, mate. He was playing a Champions League semi-final 15 months ago. Very experienced player. I think, I could see him potentially being a cover at right back, which is with the way you change, mate, is a little bit off-putting for those looking at Lamptey. Personally, how much has the young boy impressed you? Because he's done very well since he came in from Chelsea.
Brilliant, yeah. The confidence of him to come in at a difficult point in the season as well, and he was brilliant. The energy, and not just going forward defensively, I think he's been really good. In that Burnley game, he played at wing back. He got up and down, and he created chances. I thought he was brilliant. Yeah, especially if he gets that right wing back. If we play that far at the back, I think he could be a really, really good option. Yeah, I like him a lot, Lamptey.
Do you, just before we move off of sort of the defence, how much have you seen of Ben White? Because the Leeds guys we know are rave about him.
Yeah. Well, I've seen him here and now. I've been watching him when I can, because he's been on loan a few times now. When he's been on the TV, FA Cup games, he's always looked quite good. Last year, I watched a few Leeds games on the telly and stuff, and he looks like one of those players that will fit very nicely into a Potter team. Brings the ball out of the back well, young, but I think people are throwing numbers around like 35, 40 million. Surely you'd think he'll be starting. But I like the look of him. Yeah, him and Lewis Dunk could be really, really strong. Yeah.
By all accounts, mate, he's a top player. 1 year in the Championship for Leeds, obviously were the best team in the league last year. Yeah. And looks like the club. I mean, yours is a club that's well run. Is not going to be forced into selling a player they don't want to, unless the player really wants to leave. So, I mean, the numbers that he's getting mentioned for him now, should he stay with you and do very well, you might be looking at double those sort of numbers next year if one of the big 6, or for example, wants to have a look at him. He must be English, isn't he?
English, yeah.
Yes.
He adds a bit of value to his
Harry Maguire numbers, Harry Maguire went for 80, did he? So double up your 40 and suddenly you're not far off that. Whether or not it's a year though, James, but soon. Right?
I was more thinking, does anybody know where Ben White had his holidays this year?
Yeah.
No, I think unless Liverpool or Chelsea have been rumoured, I think unless one of them come in with a really big bid, he'll be our player next season. Yeah.
It won't be Spurs, because we don't play football from the back anymore, mate. You can cover in midfield as well. I've got a bit of a belief, Sam, that you're probably a bit stronger in there when Basuma plays. I think he's a player you like as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
Talk to me about him, if you can, a little bit, because him and Stevens are obviously both 4.5 million. And I feel like if you're looking for one of them, these two might actually be the best two. But I wouldn't really know which one to go with. I can't be having Dale Stevens in my team again, mate. Misses will be so on my case, mate.
Bissouma or Stevens? Bissouma is, I think, after that restart, he up with Lamptey, he was one of our most impressive players. I think he's becoming the player we thought he'd be. Strong in midfield, but box to box as well. Going forward, he scored a brilliant goal against Burnley as well. I think if he can become a little bit more consistent, if we get to see those performances more regularly, I think he'll be a starter. Definitely. At 4.5 million, you're not going to get anything special, but I think that's a good price for him. And I think I'd prefer him over Dale Stephens, actually.
Interesting, because obviously all the ownership numbers at time of recording, about 15% Stephens, 2% Bissouma. I feel like he's the one who's got the physical characteristics in terms of the physicality and a bit more pace about him that gives you something different from a lot of all these technical players, actually. And I think Bissouma, fitness is always a concern, might prove to be the better choice, actually.
Did Dale Stephens outscore Bissouma last season? I'm assuming he did. Yeah, well, that pretty much explains why the ownership's all on Dale Stephens at the moment.
Well, Dale Stephens, to give you a little bit of perspective, scored 63 FPL points last season, playing 2,500 minutes. The year that he played every minute in your first season up, he got 87 FPL points. Now compare that at the same price to what we're predicting for Ryan, around about 130. And that's why I'm saying, obviously, Ryan offers such great value. You're not expecting a 4.5 million player to get you necessarily in excess of 100 FPL points. To be honest, you're just looking for 2 points every week from the guy. Is probably where you're at with it. But I think, Bissouma might be a more interesting choice. The concern's the minutes, isn't it? He's played basically 3,000 minutes over the 2 seasons, but a lot of that is because of injuries rather than lack of selection in many of the cases.
Yeah, he came back into the team after the restart, and he was really impressive. He maybe doesn't play 90 minutes at a time. He'll maybe get subbed off after 75, but he's more exciting than Dale Stephens, I think.
To be honest, 65 points is even better, Tam, because there's a little bit more chance of 3 points rather than 2 points with that.
That's true, yeah.
So
that's a good point,
you could make a case that's even better that if he's getting withdrawn in games, if he's someone who's going to be sitting as your third sub and he's only there for desperation purposes anyway. There were, just looking at some numbers from your restart, Sam, there were only 2 players. Sorry, that's a lie, actually. There was only 2 players who scored more than 30 FPL points. Maupay got 30. Ryan got 33. Lewis Dunk got 38, but there's a goal in there for Lewis Dunk during that period, which is essentially the difference between the 2. Are you definitely looking at Ryan, or is there any thoughts to go with Lewis Dunk's obviously first choice at centre half?
Dunk's that little bit more expensive. I think if I didn't get Ryan, I think I would get Lamptey actually at 4.5. I think that's a good option. Yeah. I wouldn't double up, but
you'd go Lamptey, the best choice of the defensive ones. You'd trust him over Veltman and Montoya to be getting the minutes, therefore.
Yeah. At the moment, I think Lamptey's the one out of the defenders.
I think this pairing idea, Serge, of Brighton and Leeds is something might get a little bit more focused, because having spent a bit of time looking at these pairings, it's probably the obvious one is Brighton and Leeds to pick up some rotation.
I'll be honest with you, when you mentioned that Brighton and Leeds were paired with each other, I did see some of the pairings earlier today, but I didn't look at them in detail. I'm trying to figure out is Brighton versus Leeds the furthest away pairing? Because we're paired with Newcastle, and that's pretty far away. So I think distance-wise,
to Newcastle,
we're basically
probably a bit more, actually, isn't it?
Probably a little bit further, but it's nothing to do with the policing and the home fixture.
Don't ask me why Brighton aren't paired with West Ham and Leeds aren't paired with Newcastle, but that's a different conversation for a different day.
Brighton are paired with Leeds and we're paired with Newcastle.
And Southampton's with Sheffield United. You would have thought, really, now with Bournemouth going down, that probably Brighton would have been paired with Southampton. You would have thought would have made sense, but not for me to judge. I don't know how they work out all that shit.
No, definitely.
Anyway,
the attacking midfield section, Sam, is where there could be a breakout. I owned Pascal Gross at the start of last season. He did give me a couple of returns, to be fair, but then just completely went off the boil. So there's this little soft spot for Pascal Gross. Aaron Moy, I just think, is an amazing footballer, and I also love the fact that you basically bought him for peanuts. Trossard, when he had his opportunities, did well. I would happily, if I knew they were going to play week in, week out, all of them are players that I'd happily own because I think they could do some damage, but I wouldn't know where to start until and when. It's one of those where I'd have to jump on it after I'd seen it. It's not one that I'd be willing to risk to get on early, you know?
Yeah, that's the problem. That is the problem. You can't guarantee minutes for any of them, really. There's so many of them there. I like Pascal Gross a lot. Big fan of him, but I think we're seeing less and less of him now. He kind of offers similar things to Aaron Moore. You kind of get the same sort of thing there. It depends on what formation we play, what we go for. We don't even know the formation, so I don't know where to start with who's going to play out of them lot.
That's what annoys me the most. I want to see some stability in it this year. I think if you're looking at the midfielders at Brighton, personally, I would pay the extra for Trossard.
Yep.
If you're going for like Stevens or Basuma and Nash to set up, that's fine. It's a little bit different. But I wouldn't consider Moy. Lallana's too much, in my opinion. I think McAllister is a gamble at the moment. I think it's something further down the line we might look back on. Just looking at comparing some of Trossard and Maupay's numbers during the restart period. So interestingly, I mean, 29 and 30 FPL points between the two of them. It's neither here nor there. They both scored twice. Trossard actually had 5 big chances to Maupay's 3 during that period, interestingly enough. Yeah. And Trossard only had 1 less shot than Maupay during the period as well, which is interesting. I found some of them numbers a little bit surprising. It's also in approximately basically a game less for Trossard as well, looking at minutes in comparison to Maupay. So I think if he was to gamble on one of them, I think those two are both reasonable options. I would probably still lean to Maupay because of my setup, possibly. But I think Trossard at 6 million is at a price value where there aren't great options there. Mm-hmm. And my advice personally would be pay the extra. What's your thoughts on that, Sam? Go for Trossard if you're going to pay in Brighton's midfield area.
Yeah. Out of midfielders, Trossard is the one that stands out at the minute. I think he got rotated the least as well out of them sort of players towards the end of the season as well. We started quite a few in a row. I like Trossard, 6 million at the moment. McAllister could become an option further down the line, but not at the minute, no.
None of you guys buying your Humber cash? No? Not on the radar, James?
Yeah, I tell you what, if he repeats his game week 1 bicycle kick against Chelsea again, that'll put a smile on my face. But yeah, my day got ruined that day because Spurs played Southampton afterwards. But anyway, that's another conversation. Just on Trossard, finally looking at his overall season, it's worth saying, look, obviously that was his first season. We know how difficult it can be to adjust to a new league. He came from Belgium as well, right, Sam? So, I mean, the step up in quality of league is very different. 5 goals, 5 assists in 2,000 minutes is not bad. The problem is with that, when you dig a bit deeper, is I don't think he's playing 90 minutes too often.
No,
So that's probably over more games than it looks, actually.
Yeah. He was a bit of at the beginning of the season. He started well, then it was a bit stop-start, injuries, and but after the restart, I think he was a good player for us. Yeah.
Where do you think you finished this year, mate?
Oh, I hate making predictions. Where do I think? I would say 13th.
And how many Brighton players are you starting with?
1 or 2. There'll be at least 1 in there, definitely.
Matt Ryan.
I feel like Matt Ryan's 1.
It could be Ryan. It'll be probably more defensively Ryan and Button or Lamptey. It'd be one of them, really. I probably won't be looking anywhere else. Maybe Basuma as just a 5th midfielder. Yeah, I could see any of them getting in.
Yeah, there's a shout. There's actually identifying here. So there's 6 or 7 names actually to consider here, and there's some other clubs. Unfortunately, we're going to speak to people, and it's going to be, "How you doing, mate? What you been up to this summer?" This isn't one of them. They're an interesting side to follow this year, and I actually think Sam 13th. I think you're underplaying that this year. I think you'll finish higher than that.
I really hope so.
Yeah, I think you're probably, for me personally, I think you probably called it right. Somewhere around 12th, 13th, 14th is probably where you guys will end up. But if it all comes good and Potter really manages to take his philosophy and stuff to another level and get the team playing better, then there's no reason why not. It's only the depth up front. I think Maupay, once you get behind Maupay, Connolly's still an experience, and Glenn Murray's about 350 or 351 years old now. So I would want to see you guys have more strength up in depth up top with a real goal scorer and a 20 goal a season goal scorer, but they're hard to come by. But you take that, right? 12th, 13th, 14th. It'd be an improvement on last season just gone.
Last season was our best ever finish, so improve on that if we can get towards 13th. Yeah, I think that'd be a very successful season.
What you want this time next year, Sam, or in 10 months or whenever, is for everybody to look at you and think they're established now. They're not a side that's going to fight the drop, because there'll be other people listening to this who think, nah, I still see them in the bottom 5 or 6 this season. So I think that's the big step. If you're never involved in the fight this year and finish 13th, that's fine, mate. Yeah,
we're somewhere in the middle at the minute of the newly promoted relegation battlers and then the mid-table safe. So if we can, make that step up, really important season, but I'm looking forward to it.
Good luck,
mate.
Good
stuff. Yeah, well, thank you for joining us on our Correspondence Week, Sam, as always. Been with us from the beginning, right, as we enter into season 4. Yeah. So looking forward to all your interaction. For those of you that don't follow Sam, FPL Seagull on Twitter, it's a good place to head over and find him. If you're a patron, you might be in our Slack channel. And just to put it out there, Sam's had some pretty tasty FPL ranks as well. So if he's not just talking about Brighton, but talking about FPL in general, then he's worth listening to. What made me laugh earlier was when James was talking about what it was like 25 years ago down at Brighton. James, this guy wasn't even born then, so
he's definitely heard the stories of the Goldstone and the With Dean and all that kind of stuff. So I imagine he's been told, and he's very grateful where his football club is now, I should imagine. Where did you finish last year, Sam, by the way? Rank?
17,000, around there. I got exact same amount of points as I did the year before.
And where did you finish the year before? Because it was less points last year,
20,
I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, I got 27,000 the year before, and this season I got 17,000. So
nice, good ranks, mate.
There for you. Nice to see.
I'll be looking for a new pod partner apparently in a couple of years, so we'll speak about it.
Couple of years.
I'm available.
Good man. Don't sell yourself short though.
Fantastic. Listeners, thank you for joining us on another Correspondence Week episode where we spoken to Sam, Brighton correspondent. We have plenty more coming at you throughout the rest of the week. So wherever you're listening to your podcast, whether it's iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, make sure you've got the notifications on so that you'll be notified as soon as we go live with all of those shows. James, anything else to add?
No, wish Sam very best of luck for the season. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
And as always, stay safe. Ciao for now.
Cue music, please, man child.